Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day out today. Well, I haven't made a video in a while. The last thing that I talked about was the Geoff Johns thing going on when that was still fresh. And it feels like as the days go by, more and more people want to kind of hop on the hate train for him. People are really hating on him. And I think that's a bit unfair. And what I really want to talk about with this, I want to talk about writers and the experimentations that you can take within the comic book medium. Or I'm not sure I even actually want to call it that. The graphic storytelling medium. There you go. Because that works for the experimental way of what I'm trying to get across here. There are so many different ways to make, quote unquote, a comic book. And there's the ways that everybody officially accepts as the way, and there's only one way of doing it. Now, granted, I have particular ideas for how to go if you want to do it a certain way. And usually, it's the way that everybody wants to do it. And it's really super stupid simple, right? You write something, and then that goes off to the artist, and traditionally, from what I know of, and from what I studied, and from the way that I kind of prefer things to go, is the artist really creates the book. And that's nothing against writers, as I'm a writer myself. But there's always been this imbalance between writers and artists and what they do in the particular thing together and all that. Geoff Johns writes in a very specific, detailed way. He loves to communicate with the artist, and he loves to get their take on it. Now this is, I am going off of what I've heard from other artists that have worked with him. Not just one single one, a bunch of them. This is what Gary Frank has said, this is what Jason Fabok has said, this is what Ethan Van Sciver has said. He likes to communicate with you on how this is gonna go. Now, do I think that he has a specific way about how things should go, too? For his story? Yes. Yes, I do. Not for everything. I don't think that he's going okay, every single thing has to be like this. No. But I think that when he comes up with a specific story, and he gets a vision, there's no denying that Johns has a vision. Now, I'd love to read Johns' writing where his words get to create the actual image. So a novel or a short story of anything by him. Because to me, that would really kind of challenge his ability as a writer, and for me to really kind of give him a lot of credit as a writer. But the interesting thing, though, is that to me, Geoff Johns is, even though he's not a traditional guy in the sense of a lot of the other guys that I really, really love, and a lot of the guys that I love to study, say Howard Chaykin, or Gil Kane, who to me is one of the best comic book artists ever. Gil Kane. No fucking shit. But Johns is a comic book writer. He's not a novelist. He doesn't write short stories. He's not that. I wouldn't even go so far as to say that he's really a Hollywood guy either. Because I've taken his stance numerous times when I've heard about a lot of background shit about him with the movies. But I don't necessarily think that he's a Hollywood guy. Kevin Feige is a Hollywood guy, and he's already proven it. You see, a lot of these guys have already kind of proven what they are by seeing the passion that they get into. Johns is a passionate comic book dude. He loves the world that these characters live in. He loves to write for them. He loves to relive them, clearly. He has a lot of love and a lot of, like, emotional holds onto almost all of these characters. Specifically, like, I guess kind of the smaller guys, quote unquote. Like, even, like, okay, when I was growing up, there was only one hero, and that was Batman. And a lot of the times, it's still like that now. It's Batman, and that's it. Only him and nobody else. You could watch, like, a toy commercial for the Justice League movie, and all the heroes are there, and they're going up against fucking Steppenwolf, but Batman saves the fucking day with his Batmobile, because you don't need the Justice League. And, so it's always been him. So a lot of the characters that are actually major main first 7 JLA members, like Green Lantern, were the smaller guys. And Geoff Johns took his style of writing for the graphic storytelling medium, and he made Green Lantern into what I think one of the best spacey, sci-fi, science, fantasy cop comics I've ever read. I really, because it really is all of those things, and like a space epic. It is all of those things. His entire run, it's freaking amazing, and I think I always kind of get this artist's name mixed up, Rhys Ifans or Rhys Ifans. Somebody could probably definitely correct me on that, as I've never actually known how to say his name. He's an artist that I like, though, and he works well with Johns, and some of his best stuff came from working with him, and that's what that's what I really want to add about Johns' credibility as a comic book writer, and not really a writer per se, just a writer, a comic book writer, is this shit works really fucking well when you're able to marry, like, text of the actual story and the images together, and it just makes something really good. And there's a lot of excellent stuff from the past that has done stuff like that. I don't think that there's enough, though, even from a lot of the comics that I really love from, like, a lot of olden days, a lot of artists that I absolutely adore, and guys who are the fucking guys to study, okay, like Wally Wood and Harvey Kurtzman, like, those are the guys, okay? You don't really want to look at, like, Jack Kirby that much. You don't really want to even look at, I hate to even say this, you don't really want to look at any of the current guys. If you, this is like a side note here. If you want to get into the comic book industry and you want to draw like a fucking pro, you look at those guys, man. Alex Toth and Byrne Hogarth, those guys. So, side note done. But even amongst a lot of great creators like them, their art shines the story more than the story itself. And I think when this was really being put to the test and worked out really well, where the writing of the writer, or where the actual writer's words and story came and painted this image alongside the artist, where they worked together to create some great shit, is absolutely when Jim Shooter was the guy around. When he was doing Marvel, okay, that's the best Marvel will ever be to me. Because it's the only time that I ever read titles that I never cared about then and don't care about now. Except for the X-Men. But I grew up mainly a DC guy. Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man, and the X-Men, and that's it. I never cared about Iron Man. Never cared about Thor. Never cared about Hulk. I liked the show though when I was growing up, but I never cared about the comic book. Jim Shooter becomes a frickin' editor and does all of the things. It has all of his writers do their best fucking work. Has the artists do their best work, and has them and the inkers and the letterers, who not a lot of people really talk about them, that's an important fucking job, and I don't think anybody really actually kind of notices that. All of that stuff was like going as best as they possibly could when Jim Shooter was the guy around, when he was head editor. And Johns, to me, is a lot like trying his best to perform what Jim Shooter would want of him if he worked under him. I actually, for some reason, don't think that they would get along, because Shooter believes in the story and the creation and the product, all of it rolled up into one. And Johns, I think, kind of focuses more as a creator, which is fine. Still actually get my vote for that. Actually, both of them do, because I like them both. Jim Shooter is an excellent mentor. You don't even have to know him. His stuff is everywhere online, and it's some of the best stuff that you can learn. But, Geoff Johns is not... I don't think that he's a bad guy. I don't want to seem like I'm, kind of rambling. Maybe I have been. Maybe I've been kind of going all over the place. So I'm trying to kind of focus it all in right here. We're just talking about how the writing of comics can help the actual imaging. And I guess I would be using Geoff Johns as a prime example of this. Why I think that he's a comic book writer and not a writer, and not a Hollywood guy. Johns, it's his flaw as a writer is that his stories are not tight enough. Now that's where, if, let's say, Jim Shooter was like his editor, right? That's the thing that they would not get along on, because Shooter wants tight scripts, tight stories. That's what I like too, and that's also what I look for, and that's how I do my stuff. Johns' stuff is not tight enough, and it's a little bit too much into everything. It tries to pull in everything from almost every single direction. And I think at times he doesn't make it so accessible for anybody to just kind of hop into. A lot of his stuff, you do have to, unfortunately, kind of know a decent amount. I'm not saying that you have to know everything, but you mainly have to know Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's what you need to know to actually enjoy kind of any of Johns' stuff. His earlier stuff, I'm a really big criticizer of. His early shit with the JSA stuff. Maybe not so much the main run itself, but he did a few... I guess it was a sideline. I even forgot the name of it. JSA something. It was not very good. The way that it was done, the way that the art is, there's just not enough happening in a single issue, and it is a good example of how a lot of people fuck up today. There's just nothing going on in a single issue, and it's way too expansive, and it's not tight enough, and it's way too reliant on so much continuity from other things for you to actually kind of give a shit about. It's almost like constantly treating you as if you've been watching Star Trek your whole fucking life, and you just kind of jump into a new Khan movie, and you're supposed to act like you have this emotional connection to it. You know what I mean? And it's like, but I don't. You know what I mean? Like, for like, I guess anybody that has actually watched Star Trek for almost their whole life might actually get that, but for a person who hasn't, they're not really going to get that if they just magically make a new Khan movie that's supposed to be connected to the original Khan. And they're going to, like, like try to kind of force you to, going to be like, fucking care about it. Still feel like I'm kind of rambling, so again, trying to kind of keep... See? This is, this is what happens to Johns. Try to keep it tight here. Geoff Johns writes comics well, though. Now he does. Later on, after all of his early JSA stuff. I want to say he really started honing that shit in when he took over Wally West, which is his best Flash. Not that his Barry Allen was bad, it was actually quite good, but it didn't get a fucking chance to breathe. You got, like, just the beginning of something that I think could have been really great, and then they were like, reboot, Flashpoint, start all over again. Fuck you, Johns, and all that stuff, but it's like, no, don't do that to him. I really didn't like that. Even though Flashpoint is such, like, a big deal amongst people, it's, and I did like it, though I think I like the animated movie more. It was, I don't know, it's like a reminder to me of how Geoff Johns got kind of stiffed in that. When he started on Green Lantern, though, he got better. And his Green Lantern Rebirth was really awesome. And his actual run was awesome. All of the different shit that he was kind of pulling in, he made it expansive enough for the Green Lantern universe. That's what I think is so fantastic in terms of what he was not very good at, which was kind of keeping a very tight story. He didn't really have to worry about that with this, but he managed it in I guess the best way he could, which is we're going to keep it only in the Green Lantern world here. But we could still expand things out. But it's all going to be in outer space, and there's going to be red lanterns, and blue lanterns, and orange lanterns, and all this other crazy stuff. And he just made a huge epic out of it, with great character work on Hal Jordan, great character work on almost everybody, and just really good, epic, big-scale space stories, big space fantasies. And it was fucking dope. And he wrote perfectly for the Images to tell these stories for you. So you could get something. So you can really get the story communicated to you. That's what's so great about what Johns does as a comic book writer, and why he's a good comic book writer. And a lot of other writers fail at this. And then some of the artists fail at this. We're at a moment right now where it's all about the writer right now. And that's bullshit. Because, it's not bullshit as if it's not real. I mean, it's bullshit as in that's bullshit. Like, that's stupid. This is a lot like where we were in the 90s, where it's all about the artist. And the stories suffered. Right now, it's all about the writer and the artist suffering, but the stories are also suffering. And the stories are suffering because the writers are trying to overshadow everything by using a format that supports the art more, where the art is supposed to communicate everything to you. This is where the experimentation can come from. Okay, is that when we now live in a world where nobody wants to call these things comic books anymore in the main market, everybody wants to call them graphic novels now. None of these are actually graphic novels. Okay, if you know who Will Eisner is, then you know that none of these are graphic novels. And I trust that anybody watching this knows who Will Eisner is. He made the graphic novel. Jim Steranko made one also. You know, like where you create the graphic novel, which can still be very experimental. And what a lot of these writers should be doing is they should be honing their craft as writers, where you can make text exist on its own while also maintaining a perfect companionship with the art itself. Now, if you've ever read Will Eisner's A Contract with God, that's a great example of what I'm talking about. It is written and drawn in a way that is a new reading experience for you as just a reader to get into. And what's great about it is that it's one of those rare times where where you will get to sit down and enjoy something and not have to overly think about a lot of bullshit that's all kind of going on now. Because I know that a lot of the stuff that we know now is, I think, kind of hindering our enjoyment of like anything coming out right now. A lot of the future state stuff coming out with the DC, it's hard to enjoy it when everybody's already kind of got their own like opinion on it, but we also got like all of these facts on all of these things, and it's already, you're just kind of sitting there just being like, like we're all a little too ready to be critical before we're already kind of jumping into it. And so we're not really able to enjoy it. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that I don't think a lot of people understand this craft. I don't think anybody understands this as a trade. And I don't think anybody understands it as a medium. I think Geoff Johns does, though. If I was to ever get into somebody, I'd say Johns understands this as a medium. Will Eisner understood this as a medium. And what I was getting at with his book is that it is written where you are going to open it up and there is going to be words, okay? And there's not going to be an image just yet, and there's going to be words. And you're going to read this as a story, and then you're going to turn the page, and there's going to be a couple images, but there's still going to be words. This thing, it is, in its sense, if you wanted to break it down in the simplest way possible, it is a mature storybook. We all had to come up with that word, didn't we? We had to come up with that word for essentially kids. But you see what's interesting is that nobody wants to be associated like that. You don't want to be on the subway reading a storybook, right? I feel like they try their damnedest to want to get you to be like, no, it's okay, you can still pick up a graphic novel and just kind of sit there and just like enjoy it and read it and stuff like that. Listen, this isn't the 70s anymore. You should be able to fucking enjoy anything you want anywhere anyway. But when you really kind of come and think about it, nobody has... Okay, stay with me when I say this. Nobody has matured the medium. Now, what I mean by that is nobody has taken the format in newer places anymore. Everybody has stopped. Everybody keeps it exactly where it is. You open up a page, and it's a bunch of panels, and there's a bunch of words, and you turn the page, and it's the same fucking thing, and it's going to continuously tell you its story. Whether you like it or not is not relevant right now. I'm not even getting into that. I'm just getting into the format, and how the format doesn't have experimentation in it anymore. Okay, and I think that you need to have a certain type of idiosyncrasy. God, I hope I even said that word right. I feel like I've been stumbling over myself a lot. You need that. And some people would say that Tom King is that. And I have not the nicest things to say about him. I think he's a good example of who not to be. Geoff Johns is a good example of who to be. That's why I get so kind of blown away by like everybody's kind of thinking about how Johns is like this asshole. I think he's got an ego. Yeah, I do. But I don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's any of these things. Because his passion for what he believes in is in his work. That's the closest part of him being a writer, like just a writer, and a creator. Okay, everybody, anyone that is in any sort of creative field, whether you're writing or drawing or painting or anything like that, you're going to put you in it. You are in it, no matter what. Okay, it doesn't matter what the material is. Okay, whether you're Howard Chaykin, whether you're Chuck Dixon, whether you're Tom King even, or Geoff Johns, or that what's his name, Rags Morales or something. Whether you're any of those people, they're putting them in their stories. There's a part of them, part of their beliefs, part of their ideas, part of their imaginations, part of whatever it is that makes them them and has them think the way that they do. It doesn't matter what that is. But whatever it is, it's in their stuff. It's in their creations. Okay? And that's what makes, especially all of those names that I just named, they're all very different. Right? They all approach their stuff very differently. Okay, from everybody. Okay? Howard Chaykin is a fucking awesome dude at this job. Geoff Johns is great at it. Chuck Dixon is great at it. I'm not really a fan of Rags Morales, but that's actually aside the point. Because what Rags does is also completely different. But whatever the fuck they do, they're doing it from who they are. Johns he's a passionate guy, definitely. And I can relate to that. He believes wholeheartedly, and I really do think this as I'm saying this. Okay, he puts his beliefs of just being a person in his books. He puts what would be some of the worst things when it comes to villains. What are some of the worst things a person could be? What are some of the worst things a person could do? What is the most interesting things that a person could do against someone else? And that's how he writes his villains. Because if any of you notice, Geoff Johns, when it comes to all of the mainstream writers in DC and Marvel, I don't think anybody, and this even goes for Scott Snyder, okay, nobody has written villains as twisted, psychotic, and evil as Johns. And yet, he's able to have his heroes go up against some of the worst fucking things possible and overcome it. You know, he has Barry Allen, who goes through such a terrible trauma and has all of these horrible things consistently happen to him. But he, as a person, is still very good at heart. And I personally think that that's a part of Johns. Because I know that Johns lost a sister, and I know that that affected him, and I'm pretty fucking sure that it affected everybody around him. And, but he, I think that he's gotten through it. I'm not saying that he's, like, particularly over it, though he definitely could be. I know that he's still definitely, like, missing her, of course. But he got through it. Because if he didn't get through it, he wouldn't be a name right now. Know what I mean? I think a lot of what he wrote about Green Lantern and the idea of the emotional spectrum is possibly from his own emotional journeys that he's gone through. Having Hal experience rage in the Secret Origin storyline that he wrote for him, which I thought was excellent, because you put the rage attached to his origin story, where he was angry about the events that occurred about his dad, which I thought wasn't the right way to go for the movie, because the movie made it about fear. Because I guess that they just wanted to use Parallax, like, immediately. It actually would have been better if they stuck closer to the source material, and they made it Rage. And he would go up against a Red Lantern instead, like Atrocitus or something, which actually still, I think, would have been better, considering that in Johns' version, Atrocitus is responsible for killing Abin Sur. So, which, again, when you have the movie, Parallax is the one who kills Abin Sur. I think it just would have been better, because the Rage made more sense for Hal as a character, because he's a stubborn character. He's stubborn. He doesn't. You tell him no, and he finds a way to do it anyway. He'll probably trash a few things, but it's gonna work out. Fear is not gonna creep into a person like that. Rage will. Fear would creep into somebody like Kyle. Okay, Kyle's not the guy that is going to be like, if you tell Kyle no, Kyle's going to be a little but he's going to walk away and be like, all right, fine. Fear would have creeped into that. But Hal? No. No. Rage. Rage actually should have been the thing. So that right there, that's a part of how Johns is as a writer for the comic book form. I really hope that all this made sense. I think I've actually talked enough, and maybe next time I'll find a better way to kind of get out what I'm trying to say. But I just wanted to kind of really, yeah. So that's it.